Last night, Derek Holloway received an anonymous letter suggesting that I had betrayed him and slept with one of his closest friends. He gathered a group of them, dragged me into the room, and demanded that I strip in front of everyone to prove my innocence. Beside him stood Cassidy Monroe, his graduate student, the girl who had always hovered too close, her lips curling into a smirk as her eyes landed on the scar across my shoulder. She laughed a cruel, mocking sound that cut into me like glass. "Senior, how do you even look at Aurora Mitchell like that?" she sneered, her voice rising just enough to be heard by everyone. "She's hideous, scarred like this." Their laughter filled the space thick with contempt, a chorus of judgment that made me want to disappear. My chest burned with humiliation. Every instinct screamed at me to shout to defend myself, but I stayed silent, my eyes locked on Derek, searching for a flicker of trust, a trace of the man I thought I knew. But all I saw was disgust. His brows knotted, his gaze cold and sharp. He turned away from me as if the sight of me was unbearable. "Who knows where you were last night?" he said, his tone laced with suspicion. "And those marks on your knees? What are they from serving someone else?" He spoke as though I were a stranger, not the woman who had loved him for years. He thought I would behave like I always had, that I would bow my head, beg for forgiveness, cling to him in fear of shame. His friends leaned back in their chairs, smirking, waiting for me to crumble. "She'll come back and apologize soon," one of them muttered with a cruel grin. "Maybe she should put on a show while she's at it." Another chimed in. "Wouldn't that be fun?" The words dripped with malice, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. My face remained composed, my movements deliberate as I picked up my bag and walked calmly out of the apartment. I slid into my car, the door shutting with a final click that felt like closing a chapter. My hands trembled as I typed a message to Professor Leonard Strauss. The research paper I had been working on for 3 years, the one I had foolishly promised to publish under Derek's name, I decided then and there it would carry my own. My heart pounded as I pressed send, the decision as terrifying as it was liberating. "This will kill me, Aurora." Professor Strauss's voice snapped through the phone when we spoke. "Do you realize what you're doing? You've given your best years to this study. This is for one of the top journals in the world. You're about to hand it back to a man who humiliates you." Still, when I finished editing the manuscript that night, exhausted from combing through data, I typed Derek Holloway's name into the first author position. Love makes fools out of the best of us. Professor Strauss hurled a glass across the office when I told him. It shattered against the wall, water dripping down like tears he refused to show. "You're destroying yourself," he muttered, his face drawn with disappointment. But I was stubborn. My heart was shackled to a man who no longer looked at me with affection, but with disdain. We had even begun discussing marriage recently, though Derek's growing indifference gnawed at me. He became colder each day, and the way he hovered near Cassidy in the lab felt like a knife twisting deeper. I convinced myself that publishing the paper under his name would fix things, that maybe if I gave him more, he would find his way back to me. My progress, my success seemed to make him feel small, and I wanted so badly to ease that burden. Then his text arrived blunt and icy. "Come home." Just 2 words stripped of warmth. My head ached from sleepless nights, my eyes stung with fatigue, but I left the lab, muttered an apology to Strauss, and drove back to Derek. The scene that greeted me made my stomach turn. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, empty bottles scattered across the floor. The stench of stale alcohol clung to everything. I coughed, covering my mouth, my chest burning. Derek sat on the couch, grinning as if life were perfect. Cassidy nestled against him, her hand tracing lazy circles on his waist. Their laughter filled the room. The others fell silent when they noticed me, the weight of my presence cutting through their revelry. The atmosphere shifted. Awkward silence pressed down like a storm cloud. I placed my bag down quietly, bent to gather the trash on the floor, as though cleaning was the only role I had left. My hands shook, but my face betrayed nothing. Then Derek rose. His movements were deliberate, his lips curving into a cold, humorless smile. He stopped in front of me, his eyes boring into mine from above. His voice came low and steady, each word laced with cruelty. "Take it off." I froze, my body stiffening. For a heartbeat, I thought I had misheard. "What did you say?" My voice was a whisper. His eyes narrowed, his arrogance dripping like poison. "I said take off your clothes. Didn't you hear me?" Heat flared across my face, a blaze of shame and fury. Derek had teased me before, drunk and craving the attention of his friends, but he had never demanded this. Never so openly. My hand trembled as I reached for his forehead, desperate to believe. He was fevered, delirious, anything but sober. Cassidy slinked closer, her voice dripping with false innocence. "Go ahead, Aurora. Prove it. We'll all be your witnesses. Don't worry, no one will tell." Her laughter was sharp, malicious. I glared at her, but she only smirked, her eyes glittering with triumph. She was nothing more than a graduate student, yet she held herself like a queen, emboldened by Derek's silence. "Come on, Aurora," she pressed, tilting her chin. "I'm just trying to help you. If you don't clear your name tonight, the entire institute will know your little secret tomorrow." Her words sliced into me like thorns, tearing at the last shreds of dignity I clung to. My voice was steady, cold as ice. "What exactly are you implying, Cassidy? Tell me." She giggled, her hand covering her mouth in false modesty before she collapsed against Derek's chest, her laughter echoing like claws dragging across glass. "Senior, what do you think?" "Should I tell them or keep it a secret?" she teased, her eyes flickering with malicious delight. Around us, Derek's closest friends leaned forward, their gazes sharp and hungry, waiting for my humiliation. One of them, a man who had despised me for years and had whispered countless times that Derek should leave me, stepped closer. His hand reached toward the hem of my coat, as though he had the right to strip me himself. Derek finally snapped. His hand shot out, shoving Cassidy aside as he blocked his friend. His expression was taut, his voice clipped. "I heard you were with one of my friends last night. I called him. He didn't answer." He turned his face away from me, his tone detached, pretending he was being rational. But his clenched jaw betrayed his frustration, his growing impatience. He thought he was offering me a chance to explain myself, but in truth, it was no chance at all. I knew where I had been. I had spent the night in the lab, hunched over my research, until dawn, pouring my soul into results I had handed to Derek himself. Yet even with that trust between us was non-existent. The ache in my chest spread like fire exhaustion, curling through my bones. "So what now?" I asked softly, my voice trembling with fatigue. "You won't even explain yourself," Derek snapped. His eyes bored into me. "I gave you the chance to prove your innocence. I told you to strip. Do not disappoint me." His words thundered through the silence. The weight of them pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. The men in the room shifted forward, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. They weren't here for truth. They were here for spectacle. To bare myself in front of them would be nothing short of degradation, but Derek believed it was the only way to save his pride. Pride that was all this was ever about. He told them my thesis had only been possible because of his guidance. He boasted that the grant money I had earned was his, to spend parading Cassidy around as if my work existed to feed her dinners and champagne. Now he wanted me to strip for him for them, as if my dignity was just another trophy to secure his fragile ego. My gaze swept across the room. If anyone was guilty here, it was Cassidy. She was the one who whispered in corners, whose lips brushed too close to Derek's ear, who cultivated rumors like flowers in a poisoned garden. Men in the lab trailed after her like shadows, eager to please, blinded by her coy smile. She manipulated them with ease, and they let her. I tightened my grip on my purse, swallowing my anger. "Cassidy," I said, my voice low and sharp. "You know Derek has a girlfriend, and yet you cling to him like this? Doesn't that feel wrong to you?" Her demeanor shifted instantly, her lashes lowering, her voice trembling with false fragility. "If that's how you feel, maybe I should just leave." She turned to Derek, her lips trembling in an exaggerated pout. He scowled at me, his irritation flaring. I had shifted the focus. and that he could not tolerate. He moved to reassure her, his hand grazing her shoulder, his words dripping with appeasement. His loyalty, even in that moment, bent toward her. My chest constricted. I turned ready to walk out before my composure shattered completely. My hand tightened around the strap of my purse. My steps purposeful, determined to escape, before the weight of humiliation crushed me. But Derek's patience broke entirely. He lunged forward, grabbing me by the arm. His grip was bruising, his movements violent as he yanked my coat from my shoulders. The fabric tore against my skin, falling to the floor, with a sound that rang like betrayal itself. It was warm outside that day. I wore only a blouse tucked into a skirt. I twisted, struggled, but my resistance only seemed to ignite him further. His hand fisted in the thin cotton of my blouse, and with a single savage pull, the fabric split. My shirt fell away, leaving me in nothing but a slip of fabric, my arms instinctively wrapping across my chest. And then the scar was revealed. The jagged red line across my shoulder, etched there from an accident in the lab, a scar I bore because of him. His eyes flickered across it, shame flashing briefly in his face, before he turned away, unable to look at the damage he had helped cause. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Silence stretched suffocating. Then Cassidy's laugh rang out again, high and cruel. "Oh my God," she gasped between giggles. "It's even uglier up close. Derek, how could you ever stand it?" Her laughter set my blood alight. Rage surged through me, and before I knew it, my palm cracked across her face. The sharp sound silenced the room, the sting of the slap burning through the air. Every pair of eyes that had lingered hungrily on my body now darted away, caught in shame but still unwilling to stop. Cassidy pressed a hand to her cheek, feigning injury, her voice trembling with mock tears. "She's just trying to distract you, Derek. She's guilty, that's why she hit me." Something snapped in Derek then. His pride, his rage, his obsession collided, leaving nothing but violence. He seized me again, his arms crushing around me as he lifted me off my feet and slammed me onto the coffee table. My back hit the surface with a thud that rattled through my bones. His hands clawed at my skirt, jerking at the fabric. His voice roared above me, each word thick with venom. "I don't believe you. I won't believe you until I see it myself. Today I will make this clear." Derek hissed, his grip bruising my wrist until I thought the bones would shatter. "I need to know if you've made me a fool. If you're clean, then let me check for myself." His voice was a low snarl, his eyes wild with rage. Pain lanced through my arm as his fingers crushed down the blood, draining from my hand. Numbness spread, a tingling ache that forced tears down my cheeks. Silent, unbidden, they fell, carving hot lines across my face. I twisted, fought, but I was only one woman against the full strength of a grown man. My body buckled beneath his weight, my strength no match for his fury. In a desperate moment, when his attention slipped for half a second, I gathered what little power I had left and drove my knee up. It landed, but not where it would have ended things. Not hard enough. The shock in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced with a blaze of rage. His gaze turned crimson, his face contorted with something feral. His hand clamped onto my wrist, pressing it against the floor above my head, pinning me down. The crack of his palm across my cheek echoed through the room, sharp and merciless. "You ungrateful bitch," he spat, breath hot against my skin. "I've been too good to you. Any other man would have thrown you out the moment you didn't come home last night. But I gave you a chance. I asked for an explanation, and still you refuse." The metallic taste of blood pooled in my mouth. I forced myself to swallow to bury the pain, my voice rising, cold, detached, almost foreign to my own ears. "Let go of me. If you cannot trust me, then we are finished." For a fleeting moment, he froze, his body hovering above me, his breath ragged. His eyes widened as if my words had pierced straight through him. End it. The notion had never existed in his world. We had been together since childhood. His mother, a renowned architecture professor, and my father, a respected medical scholar, had raised us side by side. Everyone had always assumed we would marry, that our futures were woven together by destiny itself. I had never truly considered leaving him, not once, until now. until the moment he broke me in front of his friends, stripped me of trust, of dignity, of love. But in Derek's mind, the story twisted. He could not comprehend betrayal coming from him. Instead, he felt wronged, convinced I had turned my heart elsewhere. His fury surged uncontainable. He crushed me harder, his grip on my shoulder vicious, his strength barbaric enough to make my bones scream. And beside him, Cassidy's eyes lit with delight, her voice silk over poison. "Senior, let me help you," she purred, stepping closer, her hands eager to join his cruelty. The others stirred too, their excitement sickening. They crowded near, their faces gleaming with the kind of anticipation that left me trembling. "Strip the professor," one muttered, laughing under his breath. "When else will we see a scene like this?" Another chimed in, his voice taunting. "Derek, if this gets out, Aurora will never show her face in Columbia again. She'll be ruined." "Shut up," Derek roared at them, but his grip on me did not loosen. His anger was not for me, but for the thought of anyone else owning the spectacle. "No one says a word outside this room. Aurora, stop fighting. I just want to see." His tone had twisted a grotesque parody of reassurance. My wrist throbbed swollen beneath his grip. His eyes caught the discoloration spreading across my skin, and for a second his hold softened, a flicker of hesitation breaking through. But before I could breathe, Cassidy struck. She seized the hem of my skirt and yanked with vicious force. The fabric ripped, the sound loud, final, humiliating. My breath caught in my throat as the thin thread snapped away. Gasps and chuckles echoed. Shame flooded me, burning every inch of exposed skin. Thankfully, beneath the skirt, I wore protective shorts from the lab. Had I not, I would have been stripped bare, destroyed entirely. The love I had once felt for Derek, a love built from years of sacrifice and loyalty, disintegrated in that instant. I slid from the table, my body collapsing to the floor, my arms wrapped around myself, shielding what little was left. My soul ached, my chest convulsing with silent sobs. Around me, the men muttered each word, a blade cutting deeper. Pathetic. Look at her, she's finished. Derek should have known better. Their voices blended into a chorus of knives slicing at my dignity, shredding what I had tried to preserve. My throat burned dry and raw, yet I forced my voice to remain steady. "Well," I asked, my tone icy, though my body shook with rage. "Have you found the evidence you wanted? Is there a single mark that proves your accusations?" I stood, my chest heaving, daring them to meet my eyes. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. But Cassidy's smile returned sharp and gleaming. Her gaze dropped to my knees. She lifted a delicate hand, pointing, her voice sugary with venom. "And what about those marks, Aurora? The bruises on your knees, what could they possibly mean?" She paused, savoring the weight of her insinuation. "Unless," her words dangled in the air, unfinished, dripping with suggestion. The hatred that surged inside me threatened to consume me. How could a woman wield such cruelty against another? She knew what she implied, and she relished it. Derek's expression darkened further, his eyes narrowing as he bent closer to inspect. His suspicion roared back to life, fed by Cassidy's poison. His hand seized my arm once more, yanking me upright. "She's right," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "Why are your knees red? Who were you kneeling for last night, Aurora? Who were you serving?" My chest heaved, fury spilling over as I met his gaze with fire. "You think you know the answer?" I whispered, my voice sharp as glass. He faltered. For one brief instant, his eyes flickered with panic, with something human, as if he realized how far he had gone. But the weakness passed as quickly as it appeared, drowned by pride. The truth burned on my tongue, and I let it scorch the air between us. "Last night there was an accident in the lab. The mice in your experiment escaped. I spent hours crawling on the floor to catch them. That is why my knees are raw. That is why they are bruised. I was working for you, for the results you will claim as yours." My words rang through the room like thunder, but he did not hear. He refused to. His eyes blazed with denial, with the desperate clinging to a narrative that painted me guilty. I laughed then, the sound bitter, broken, yet sharp enough to cut. I laughed at his blindness, his stupidity, at the years I had wasted on a man so easily manipulated, so eager to believe the worst of me. I laughed a bitter sound that scraped from my throat because in that moment the absurdity struck me. All these years I had loved a man so blind, so weak, that he could be swayed by whispers from others without ever looking me in the eye. My gaze cut into him sharp as a blade. Derek Holloway. Do you even have a mind of your own? How can you be so easily manipulated? My laugh cooled into silence, my expression hardening. Last night I was in the lab. If you don't believe me, call Professor Strauss. He'll confirm it. Relief washed across Derek's features, a visible exhale, as though my words had given him a rope to cling to. His voice softened with false contrition. Aurora, it's only because I love you so much. Can't you see that the things people say clouded my head? I just wanted to clear your name quickly, that's all. He stretched out his hand to me, palm upward, a gesture meant to look tender, but his eyes betrayed desperation. Here's what we'll do. Call your professor now. Put him on speaker. Everyone can hear, and then this misunderstanding will be over. My lips pressed together, my eyes narrowing, annoyance flashing. Of course Cassidy didn't want me to be cleared, and Derek thought this would be his neat solution. But I would not drag Professor Strauss into the circus. He had been furious with me earlier, so furious he had stormed out of the lab. By now he was likely asleep. Besides, why should I involve him in Derek's theater of humiliation? This is nonsense, I said firmly. He's gone home. I won't wake him for this. The refusal sparked something in Cassidy. Her eyes gleamed like a predator's, as though she had been waiting for exactly this. I've heard things, she said sweetly, her voice lilting with malice. They say Professor Strauss treats his female students with special kindness. Isn't that why you chose him as your advisor, Aurora? The innuendo dripped from her tongue like poison. The room spun, my fist clenching, fury trembling through me. I had endured her sneers, her mockery, her shameless clinging to Derek all evening. But now she dared to sully the reputation of the man who had guided me, who had treated me like his own daughter, who had warned me time and again not to give Derek my work. The insult was intolerable. I turned on her, my voice low, deadly calm. Cassidy Monroe, I've let your little game slide all night. But if you dare to drag my professor's name into this filth again, then you won't have a future at Columbia. Her face blanched, retreating half a step behind Derek, her hand gripping his arm as though she were frightened. Only half her face peeked out from behind him, the mask of a helpless girl. I didn't mean anything, she whispered, her voice trembling for effect. Are you really going to push me out just because I spoke the truth, Derek? I'm scared. Maybe I should leave. Derek hesitated, torn for a brief second. But then Cassidy twisted the knife further, her words deliberately vague, laced with suggestion. Combined with the alcohol clouding his mind, it was enough. His suspicion flared again. He knew Strauss had always been protective of me, had treated me with unusual care, cautioning me not to sacrifice my work for Derek. And Derek had hated that, quietly resented it for years. Now Cassidy's insinuation struck at the weakest point in his pride. Cassidy sighed with false reluctance and began to pull on her clothes as if ready to depart. The very act lit panic in Derek's eyes. He grabbed her wrist, his voice firm, almost pleading. Don't go, none of this is your fault. It's someone else's inappropriate behavior that caused misunderstandings. Stay. She smiled, then triumphant, and allowed him to hold her, leaning into him, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Their bodies pressed together, close, familiar, no distance at all. They didn't even pretend anymore. Images of the lab flooded my mind, the stolen glances, the secret brushes of hands, the whispers I had ignored, the rumors I had dismissed. Now I saw the truth with perfect clarity. They weren't lies. They weren't exaggerations. Derek and Cassidy had been entangled for longer than I had admitted to myself. I bent down, my hands steady, as I gathered the torn pieces of my clothing. My motions were unhurried, precise. I dressed again piece by piece, as though armoring myself. Then I raised my eyes to Derek, my tone calm, almost too calm. Derek, a moment ago I thought it was the alcohol talking, but now I see you for what you really are. You're beyond saving. I inhaled the air sharp in my lungs. As for you and Cassidy, I will not look away. If you don't want me any more, then say so. End it honestly. Don't hide behind accusations and drag me through the mud to justify yourself. His eyes flickered panic, rippling across his features. My words had cut straight into him, exposing what he had tried so hard to avoid. He knew I had contributed to nearly every accomplishment he claimed as his own. He knew his reputation depended on me. He didn't want to be labeled a thief, so he needed me to stay, to bear the blame, to be the sacrificial lamb. But I no longer pitied him. His weakness was laid bare, pathetic. It isn't necessary anymore, I said flatly. Enough. His mouth fell open, his voice sharp with desperation. What do you mean enough, Aurora? Don't be rash. Calm down. Don't let Cassidy's words drive a wedge between us. From behind him, Cassidy spoke up again, her tone dripping with false sympathy. Yes, Aurora, don't let me be the reason you break up. Talk it out with Derek, don't make hasty choices. Her hypocrisy made bile rise in my throat. I gripped my purse, my decision hardening. My gaze sliced through her. Tell me something, Cassidy. Wasn't it you who once tried to seduce Professor Strauss and was rejected? Is that why you've been so bitter all this time? Do you want me to show everyone the proof? Her face drained of color instantly. She stumbled backward, shaken, the mask slipping. Her act of innocence shattered, replaced with the truth I had seen all along. Derek mistook my silence for surrender. He gripped my wrist again, arrogant smirk curling his lips. Behind him, his friends kept laughing, their voices jeering, stabbing at my pride. Look at that, Professor Mitchell's actually leaving. Guess she couldn't handle the heat. Derek chuckled as he followed me toward the door, tossing a grin back at them. She'll come back, if she doesn't explain herself. I'll make her strip in front of all of you completely naked. Wouldn't that be something? Their laughter roared in my ears as I walked out, each word laced with venom. My steps didn't falter. I pushed through the heavy doors and into the night air, the weight of humiliation burning on my skin. Then, as if fate wanted to etch the moment deeper, I heard Derek's voice outside, sharp with irritation, as he answered his phone. A scientific journal? No, there's been a mistake. I haven't submitted any manuscript. You've got the wrong person. The sound of his words hit me like a lightning strike. I stopped, my hand already on the car door handle. My chest tightened with both fury and liberation. He turned, eyes wide, realization dawning as he understood exactly what that phone call meant. His head snapped toward me, searching my face. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and started the engine. Derek ran toward me, shouting my name, pounding on the glass, yanking at the handle, as if he could still control me. But the locks clicked, the car roared to life, and I left him pounding his fists against the night. I didn't look back. The next morning, I knocked on Professor Strauss's office door. My voice trembled only slightly as I spoke. Professor, I'd like to revise the paper. This time, I want my name as the first author. He looked at me for a long moment before his lips curved into a small, approving smile. That's how it should be, Aurora. I've told you before, no one else will save you. You must save yourself. The words sank deep into me, as sharp as they were true. That day, Derek stormed the lab again and again, trying to see me. Each time, colleagues pushed him back, muttering excuses about experiments, protocols, and deadlines. He grew desperate, circling the halls like a shadow. Professor Strauss stood nearby, silent, watchful, and finally, after a full day of observation, he spoke. There's an exchange fellowship abroad. Zurich, 1 slot. Do you want it? A year ago, I would have hesitated. I would have looked over my shoulder at Derek and thought of what it meant for us, but now there was no us. There was only me and the life I wanted. Yes, I answered without pause. I'll apply immediately. What should have taken months of paperwork I accomplished in a week. I poured myself into the process, into cutting ties, into reclaiming the life I should have owned from the beginning. And before I boarded the plane, I sent 2 final blows. The first was an anonymous complaint to the ethics committee detailing every paper Derek had published using my data, every fraudulent claim he had made. One by one, his works were flagged, then blacklisted. The second was a video I released quietly to the group chat, Cassidy attempting to seduce a senior researcher and being flatly rejected. The whispers that had once been mine now became theirs. By the time I landed in Zurich, Derek Holloway was already sinking. That year abroad changed everything. I rose quickly, paper after paper, published under my own name, my work receiving recognition I had only dreamed of. Where once I had handed my victories to Derek so he could climb, now I held them firmly in my own hands. My research earned me a direct promotion upon my return. At 30 years old, I became the youngest lead professor in the lab's history. I came back stronger, freer, unburdened by his shadow. But when I returned to Columbia, I realized Derek was still there. Somehow, despite the complaints and the scandal, he had clung to his position. Still a junior professor, still Cassidy at his side, now her status elevated as a PhD candidate. Only no one respected them anymore. His reputation had tarnished beyond repair. His words hollow, his posture bent. And when his eyes met mine for the first time in over a year, shock rippled across his face. His gaze burned with hunger, with disbelief, with longing. "You really don't feel guilty, Aurora?" he asked quietly, cornering me in the corridor. "An entire year, and not once did you reach out. We were supposed to get married." I stared back at him, my expression unreadable, then turned to my notes, refusing to waste breath. He smiled weakly, convincing himself. "It's fine. You're back now. That's what matters. I was wrong to doubt you. This year has taught me a lot." He soothed his own conscience, spinning lies to comfort himself, refusing to accept the truth. To him, I was still the girl who would always return. My eyes slid past him toward the door, where Cassidy lingered, her stare sharp with jealousy, clinging to him like a lifeline. I asked coolly, "Cassidy is still here. Why? What's she holding on for?" Derek's hand rubbed the back of his neck, his voice faltering. "Her family has connections. The lab needs her. You understand." I almost laughed. How pitiful he was, still justifying, still pretending he had power, when all he had was dependency. Derek's words about Cassidy's powerful family and the lab's need for her made me laugh outright. The sound startled him, but there was no joy in it, only scorn. I pointed toward the door. "Get out." There was nothing left to say to a man who pretended not to understand, who wrapped himself in willful ignorance to justify betrayal. Within days of my return, rumors began to spread across campus. Whispers claimed I had abandoned Derek to pursue my fellowship abroad, that I had left him for ambition. My students fumed on my behalf, their indignation fierce, but I calmed them with quiet reassurances. Let people say what they wished. I no longer cared. Cassidy was skilled at rumor making, I gave her that, but she never dared to tell the truth about why I had really left. Perhaps Derek had silenced her. Perhaps she knew exposing it would also expose herself. After all, on that humiliating night, when he had forced me to strip, there had been only 3 of us left in the building, Derek, Cassidy, and me. Secrets that dangerous never stayed hidden without consequence. Eventually, Cassidy came to me herself, her words sharpened with resentment. "Aurora, you're so ungrateful. Why humiliate me with that video before you left? I was just in love, just dating around. I was single then." A bitter smile curved my lips. "Ungrateful. You want to speak of gratitude. I helped Derek find the truth that night. I saved your precious reputation when I could have destroyed it completely. Isn't that gratitude enough?" My finger lifted, pointing toward the lab where students were busy with their work. My voice was steel. "Perhaps you should stand in front of everyone and take off your clothes. Prove your innocence to them, since you're so fond of demanding proof from me." Her face strained of color instantly. She staggered backward, pale and silent, before slinking away. I thought perhaps foolishly that after a few days of being ignored, Derek might finally understand me. But no, he remained the same, pretending, evading, pretending as though nothing had happened. Then came the phone call from my parents. The Holloways wanted to arrange a family dinner. Out of respect, I had never revealed the true reason for our separation to my family. That silence had created an ambush dressed as civility. I forced myself to attend, teeth clenched behind polite smiles. The Holloways had chosen a high-end Manhattan restaurant, the atmosphere heavy with expectation, as though we were already at an engagement banquet. I kept my gaze on my plate, concentrating on the food, refusing to meet their eyes. Finally, Derek's mother leaned in, her tone warm but heavy with intent. "It's time, Aurora. You and Derek should be thinking about marriage." I lifted my head, met her gaze steadily, and felt the weight of apology press against my ribs. "I'm sorry, but Derek and we cannot continue." The Holloways froze, their shock palpable. For years, I had been nothing but devoted to their son, never questioning, always supporting. My rejection was unthinkable to them. Beside me, Derek twisted his hands together beneath the table, his tension obvious, his eyes locked onto mine, pleading desperate. I ignored him calmly, reaching for another bite of food. Inside, my anger simmered. He had caused this wreckage, yet now he expected me to shield him, to carry the blame, to protect his dignity at my expense. The silence stretched awkward and suffocating. Derek must have realized then that if he didn't speak, our engagement was finished. His voice cracked as he finally said, "Aurora, if I haven't been good enough, please give me another chance to make it right." I set my chopsticks down with deliberate calm, dabbed the corner of my mouth with a napkin, then raised my eyes directly to his. "Derek Holloway, I've spared you enough. Don't make me speak the truth aloud." His hand froze midair, trembling before it slowly fell back to his lap. Regret and shame painted his features, though I doubted either was genuine. His parents exchanged a look across the table, realization dawning. They knew now something unforgivable had happened, something their son had done. They smoothed over the moment, quickly changing the subject with forced smiles, trying to salvage what dignity they could. I let them. I had no interest in public drama. I thanked them politely and let the evening dissolve into meaningless chatter. Back home, my parents finally shed their own masks of courtesy. Their faces were drawn with concern as they touched my shoulder. "Tell us, Aurora. We're your family. We'll stand with you." For the first time, I told them everything the night of humiliation, the betrayal, the reason I had gone abroad. Their expressions darkened with grief and fury. But when I finished, my father only sighed and said, "If even someone you've known since childhood cannot be trusted, then listen to yourself, Aurora. Follow your instincts. Choose the path that makes you feel whole again." Their words steadied me, anchored me. Soon after, the university organized a formal banquet to celebrate my promotion. I would be officially installed as the youngest lead professor in the department's history. I sat at the center table that evening, the new star of the department, while Derek lingered in a shadowed corner of the room. There was a time when he would have been glued to my side, basking in my presence, while resenting it all the same. My achievements had always made him feel small, yet he clung to me as though my brilliance validated him. Now, with distance between us, I felt a surprising wave of relief. That night, the department introduced a new postdoctoral researcher freshly minted from his PhD program. His name was Miles Davenport, and from the moment he walked in, there was a light about him, bright, unburdened, like a spark that refused to be dimmed. He carried himself with a kind of confidence that wasn't arrogant but warm, infectious. When he deliberately took the seat beside me, I found myself oddly unsettled. His presence was like sunlight pressing against my skin. Without realizing it, I finished 2 glasses of wine, more than I intended. I couldn't ignore the way Miles looked at me. His eyes shone like they carried constellations, always fixed on me with admiration that felt both flattering and dangerous. That gaze made me want to hide, so I lifted my glass again just to shield my expression. Before the rim could touch my lips, his hand gently pressed mine down. "Professor Mitchell," he said softly, sliding a cup of hot tea into my other hand, "you shouldn't drink so much. Here, this will warm you instead." The warmth of his palm lingered as he guided the glass from me. His fingers firm but gentle, insistent that I put it down. Heat rose up my neck, blooming across my cheeks. Embarrassed, I took the tea in one gulp, only to choke as the steam burned my throat. I coughed violently and Miles laughed quietly, his low voice brushing against my ear as he reached up to steady me, rubbing my back until my breath returned. The students around us erupted in teasing laughter, their voices full of mischief. Miles only smiled unruffled and introduced himself plainly. "Don't tease me. I'm only here because of Professor Mitchell. I've admired her for a long time." Laughter turned to cheers, the teasing louder, but his words hit me with startling force. "Admired me for how long?" All the while, Derek and Cassidy sat in their corner, their silence thick with disdain. They hadn't joined the celebration, hadn't congratulated me once. Finally, Derek's voice broke the air, bitter and cold. "Professor Mitchell, don't corrupt the innocence of our new recruit. He's too young for your influence." The room went quiet, the insult naked, the implication obvious. But Miles didn't flinch. He smiled calmly, his tone light, but his words razor sharp. "Professor Holloway, forgive me, but wasn't it you who once admired her and failed? Perhaps you're bitter because I'm honest about it." Cassidy shifted uncomfortably beside him, trying to insert herself with a sly smile. "Oh, Miles, you don't know the half of it. Our dear professor has quite a history." Her words slithered through the air, laced with venom. I turned my gaze on her sharp as a blade, and she froze, shrinking back into silence. Miles glanced at me, his smirk deepening, as though he'd just witnessed me cut down a rival with nothing more than a look. The atmosphere recovered, laughter spilling back into the room. Each time someone else tried to pour me a drink, Miles intercepted smoothly, holding out his hand like a barrier. "She's had enough." His protectiveness drew more teasing, but I found myself smiling, secretly grateful. When the banquet finally ended, I stepped outside into the night air, the cool breeze washing over my flushed skin. Miles was right behind me, insistent that he see me home. His eyes were too intense, too focused, and I wanted to look away but couldn't. There was something dangerous in the way he looked at me, something that made me want both run and stay. For the first time in years, I almost said yes. Just as I was about to answer, Cassidy's shrill laugh cut through the crowd. She pushed her way forward, draping herself shamelessly across Miles's shoulder. He stiffened immediately and shoved her arm away, his face twisting in disgust. Undeterred, she pouted, then leaned close to whisper in my ear, her voice dipped in poison. "Professor Mitchell, you've been gone a year. Don't fool yourself, you and Derek aren't clean anymore." Her words slithered down my spine, but I didn't even bother to look at her. That only made her smirk widen. "My family is powerful, Aurora. Don't think your little academic brilliance can keep you above me forever. If I want to drag you down, I'll find 100 ways." The alcohol swirled in my veins, making the world tilt. My stomach churned with nausea, but my voice was steady when I answered. "Then try. See how far you get." She blinked, startled at my calm, then sneered. "You always act so fearless. Don't forget, Derek is still young, handsome, wealthy, and one of the most admired professors here. You think you can just toss him aside? Or are you planning to trade him in for this new boy?" Her eyes slid toward Miles, filled with mockery, as though daring me. Before I could reply, Derek appeared at the bottom of the steps. His eyes locked on me, and for a moment I thought I saw desperation flash across them. "Aurora, I'll take you home." I ignored Cassidy's smirk and Derek's attempt at gallantry. Miles stepped closer, his hand brushing mine in a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. "Professor Mitchell let me take you instead. Unlike him, I haven't been drinking. I can guarantee your safety." Derek's face darkened instantly, fury boiling just beneath his skin. The tension crackled in the air, and though every instinct told me to step away from both of them, I felt something shift inside me. For once, Derek's shadow didn't terrify me. For once, I had another option, one that glowed with promise instead of dread. Derek staggered with rage, his words dripping with contempt. "And what car do you even have?" He snapped his fingers, and within moments, a black Mercedes-Benz rolled to the curb. A year had passed since I had last seen him, and it was painfully clear that life had treated him well. He pulled at my arm as though I were still bound to him, trying to shove me toward the waiting car, but I jerked free, my voice cutting sharp. "It's not on the way." Miles lifted a hand and gestured toward his own car, quiet and understated, nothing flashy. I shook my head. I couldn't let the glow of his youth or his earnestness lull me into lowering my guard. Cassidy laughed, her voice shrill as she pointed at Miles's car. "That piece of junk, you dare to show that off." Her ridicule drew eyes from the others, but instead of laughing with her, they only shook their heads. The ignorance on her face made her look foolish. And in that moment, it hit me. Miles wasn't just brilliant, he was privileged in a way Cassidy could never imagine. The boy who seemed so bright and eager was in truth an heir. A man born into a family of influence, yet determined to earn his own place through work. Derek had sensed it too. From the day he realized Miles had feelings for me, he had begun showing up at the lab more often, offering excuses to join my projects. I had no reason to refuse, but his motives were transparent. Still, the real war had only begun. One by one, the awards I applied for were rejected without explanation. Research papers that needed institutional approval mysteriously stalled. Every door I pushed open was slammed shut in my face. Professor Strauss himself was baffled. When he pressed the administration for answers, the truth emerged in a single line, whispered behind closed doors. Cassidy Monroe had friends in the administration, and she was using them to block me. Departments were supposed to operate independently. Academic work and administrative influence weren't meant to overlap. But power had always been Cassidy's only weapon. One afternoon, during a rare break in my lab schedule, Derek appeared again, his shadow stretching across the sterile floor. I peeled off my gloves, meeting his eyes with cold detachment. "Tell your protege to stop interfering." He had the audacity to look wounded, as if I'd accused him unfairly. "Aurora," he said. Softly, "Just come back to me. If you do, I'll tell her to stop." A laugh escaped me, brittle and sharp. He still thought I was the girl who would bend, who would sacrifice, who would accept humiliation for his sake. He couldn't see that part of me was gone forever. His reputation remained polished. The whispers about him drowned beneath Cassidy's influence, even earning him the ridiculous title of Outstanding Faculty of the Year. All of it was a lie propped up by her family's connections. I slid the gloves back onto my hands, turned away, and picked up my work again. He leaned closer, his breath hot with frustration. "Why you're giving up? You're not going to submit for any awards. You'll let her win." The disgust welled up in me until it burned my throat. "You underestimate me," I said quietly, my voice colder than liquid nitrogen. "I'm not bound to this one university. Professor Strauss's students don't need just one institution to thrive." Panic flickered across his face. He fumbled with his hands, trying to soften his tone, playing the role of the remorseful lover. "Aurora, I only want to be with you. I was wrong. Don't hate me, please." Before I could answer, Miles appeared in the doorway, his tall frame a shield against Derek's looming presence. His voice was steady, protective. "Professor Mitchell, do you need me to step in?" Placed side by side, the contrast was blinding. Miles stood like a current of fresh air, unburdened, his youth glowing with a promise of renewal. Derek, in comparison, was heavy, suffocating a man, rotting in the shadow of his own ego. The darkness on Derek's face deepened, but strangely, my own spirit lifted. I reached for Miles's arm, guiding him closer, patiently showing him the steps of the experiment. Derek's jealousy seethed in the corner of the room. "What are you even doing here?" His voice cracked, unable to mask the rage. "You have no place interfering between us." Miles chuckled, his smile disarming his tone, calm. "Funny, because from where I stand, it seems like you're the one interfering. Unless you'd like me to solve your problems too, Professor Holloway." His confidence was maddening to Derek, but it felt like balm to me. Miles looked like a loyal pup defending someone he adored, and the comparison made me laugh inwardly. Without thinking, I reached up and ruffled his hair. To my surprise, it was unbelievably soft. His eyes lit up instantly, glowing like a boy who had just been handed candy. For a heartbeat, he looked so happy, so radiant, it was almost unbearable. Derek had always hated when I touched his hair, slapping my hand away in public, as though my affection shamed him. The memory made me pull back quickly, afraid Miles would drown in the affection he seemed to crave. "This is grown-up business," I said, lightly pulling my hand back. "Don't insert yourself where you don't belong." The smile faded from his lips. His expression turned serious as he pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Aurora, you're only 2 years older than me. Stop pretending I'm a child. I chose this field because of you. Don't dismiss me like I don't matter." And for the first time, I felt the weight of his words settle deep into my chest. "Miles, I'm only 2 years older than you. Do you really need to treat me like I'm some fragile older sister?" I had no answer to that because deep down, he was right. Most people spent 5 grueling years finishing their doctorates, but I had done it in 3. In truth, there wasn't much of an age gap at all between me and the graduate students, who now looked at me with such awe. I stayed silent, burying myself in the experiments, not wanting to waste breath on what lay beyond the lab. Less than 6 months later, our research team achieved a breakthrough that shook the academic world. My name appeared across scientific news outlets. My work referenced in professional forums, my results dissected in lectures far beyond Columbia's walls. In the official publication, the list of authors bore Professor Strauss's name and those of the actual contributors. Derek's wasn't there. The moment he saw it, he stormed into the lab, his face twisted with fury. "Aurora, what the hell do you think you're doing? You cut me out, but you gave the rookie Davenport a spot on the paper." His voice thundered across the room, echoing off glass and steel. "Even if you don't want to marry me, have you forgotten who we are? We've been together since childhood. You owe me." I turned slowly, my voice like ice. "I don't owe you anything, not anymore. I will never let anyone use me again." For a heartbeat, he faltered, then lashed out with cruel precision. "I only stripped your dress once to see if you had betrayed me, and that's why you hate me so much, is that it?" His words were a blade meant to tear my reputation apart in front of my team. He said it loud enough that everyone could hear, hoping to shred me in the same way he once did, when I was too afraid to fight back. But this time, instead of shame, a bitter joy rose in me. His desperation was exposed. His obsession was still raw, still festering. He couldn't let it go. And that meant I had won. Others in the lab didn't share my detached amusement. Miles stood beside me, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles went white. Then without hesitation, he drove his fist straight into Derek's face. "You bastard!" Derek staggered backward, clutching his jaw, eyes blazing as he lunged to retaliate. Before he could strike back, the rest of the team surged forward. Male researchers forced him down, pinning him against the floor the way his so-called friends had once pinned me. They ripped his coat away, leaving him in nothing but his underwear. Female researchers stood in a cold, silent line, arms folded, watching him with the same merciless stares his friends once turned on me. Now it was his turn to feel humiliation burn through his skin. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, my stomach aching from the release. The years of silence, the nights of humiliation finally found their revenge. Derek's complexion turned chalk-white, blood seeping from the corner of his lip. He scrambled to gather his clothes, clutching them to his chest, and staggered toward the door. "Derek," I called, my voice smooth and sharp. He froze, turning eyes blazing red with rage. "Don't get too comfortable, Aurora," he spat. "You're just a woman with a PhD already past your prime. Let's see who will want you." I lifted my phone, the shutter clicking as I captured him in his disgrace. "I don't want anything from you," I said lightly. "This is just for the memories." The sound of the camera was the final shatter of his dignity. He fled half-dressed, bursting into the crowded hallway just as students were pouring out of lectures. Gasps followed him, then laughter. By the time he vanished, he had become infamous, a story whispered with both ridicule and fascination. In the aftermath, my students gathered around me, offering quiet words of comfort. Miles's eyes, however, burned red with fury, the rage he felt on my behalf threatening to consume him. Professor Strauss merely observed his calm presence, the anchor that steadied the chaos, until Miles finally unclenched his fists. I exhaled the storm in me already fading. "It's done," I whispered. "I don't care anymore." Miles shook his head, his jaw tightening. "No, it's not enough. He humiliated you, Aurora. I'll make sure he pays." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You're too serious. I just want to move on." But he didn't look away. His gaze was unwavering, burning with conviction that startled me. "I told you once, and I'll tell you again. I admire you. I chose this path because of you, and I will never let him destroy what you've built." And for the first time, I began to wonder if admiration was too small a word for what Miles Davenport truly felt. The restrictions that once chained me at Columbia had finally been lifted. For the first time, I breathed freely, while Derek became the subject of whispers, the object of ridicule. He had nowhere left to hide. In desperation, he came crawling into the lab, asking for forgiveness from me and from Professor Strauss. My professor didn't even let him finish a sentence. One sharp glance, one flicker of disdain, and he turned his back as though even the sight of Derek disgusted him. Cassidy, however, couldn't stay silent. She rushed toward me, her face twisted in feigned anguish, her voice trembling. "Aurora, please, don't be so hard on Derek. I'm pregnant with his child." The words were so vile I nearly retched. He begged me to return while planting his seed in her. My lips curved into a cold smile. "Your choices are your own. Don't drag me into them. Just hearing this makes me sick." She wanted a reaction, I knew that. But I had outgrown the pettiness of her schemes. My days were filled with something greater. Students from around the country, even abroad, flocking to observe our lab, drawn by the weight of our discoveries. I had no time for Derek Holloway or Cassidy Monroe. At year's end, the department hosted a grand banquet. Professor Strauss attended, smiling more warmly than usual. Our team, as the year's most celebrated group, sat proudly in the center. Laughter and conversation filled the hall glasses, clinking voices rising. One of the students raised his glass to Professor Mitchell. Because of her, our bonuses this year are higher than ever. Cheers followed, and Professor Strauss stood, his voice booming. "I have an announcement," he declared. "Our lab has accepted an invitation to relocate to a university with stronger funding. Those who wish to follow may do so. Students who join us will continue their research at one of the most prestigious institutions in the country." Gasps rippled through the hall, excitement sparking everywhere. But in the corner, Derek froze his glass halfway to his lips. He looked as if the floor had fallen away beneath him. Still emboldened by alcohol, he staggered toward me, his steps unsteady. Cassidy's voice cried from somewhere behind, but I ignored her. Derek poured wine into his glass, lifting it toward me alone. For me, it was final. Whatever tether had bound us was cut forever. I raised my own glass, drained it, and felt the burn scorch my throat. But within moments, heat flared unnaturally through my body, my legs weakening beneath me. The room spun. I felt someone catch me, guiding me out of the banquet hall, down corridors, into an elevator. My limbs were useless, my vision hazy. I was placed on a bed, my body heavy, unresponsive. Through the blur, a voice coiled around me like smoke, low and dangerous. "You're mine, Aurora," Derek whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "Once I sleep with you, let's see how far you think you can run." Terror jolted through me, ripping against the fog, clouding my mind. I fought, pushing weakly against him with what little strength I had left. "Derek, don't force me to hate you." My voice cracked, trembling. His face loomed above me, distorted by lust and obsession. Then darkness claimed me. When I woke, morning light spilled across the room, stabbing my eyes. Pain spread through every limb, my body aching as though I'd been dragged through fire. My first instinct was panic. I pulled the blanket down, frantically checking myself. The sight froze me, ice flooding my veins. The sheets rustled beside me. I turned slowly and my breath caught. A solid chest, lean muscles rising and falling in sleep lay within reach. But it wasn't Derek. It was Miles Davenport. He rubbed his eyes, his lashes fluttering before he turned toward me. Sleep still clung to his voice, low and husky. "Morning, Professor Mitchell." My world tilted my lungs, refusing to draw air. In that moment, I couldn't even name what I felt. There was no fear, no despair, only an inexplicable flicker of relief, almost gratitude. But why Derek had been the one to drug me? So how had Miles Davenport been the man lying beside me at dawn? My thoughts spun tangled in disbelief when Miles stretched lazily, utterly unbothered, and smirked as though none of this had been out of the ordinary. "That bastard's drugs were strong," he drawled. "So, Professor, I guess you'll just have to take responsibility for me now." I nearly choked, coughing so hard I wanted to disappear beneath the sheets. "Where's Derek?" I croaked. Miles leaned back against the headboard, hugging a pillow, his grin playful, wolfish. "Oh, him." I gave him a taste of his own medicine. Knocked him out, dosed him, and tossed him into the room next door. For extra fun, I invited Cassidy over. Let's just say the two of them tore each other apart. "You didn't know she was pregnant, did you?" My blood ran cold. "Not anymore," Miles added casually, his voice dropping cruel in its honesty. "She hemorrhaged halfway through the night. The doctors had to operate. Word is she lost the baby in her womb." I stared at him stunned, my jaw nearly unhinged. So much chaos, so much ruin in a single night. Miles only yawned, turned over, and closed his eyes. "Evil always devours itself," he murmured. The fallout was immediate. Derek's face turned gray and drawn, but his parents, oddly enough, became warmer toward me, desperate to repair what their son had destroyed. Cassidy looked like a ghost, pale and trembling, but she clung to Derek as though he were her last breath. At a family dinner arranged not long after the atmosphere was suffocating with unspoken truths, Derek's parents exchanged heavy glances before speaking. "Aurora, we've watched you grow up. You and Derek. You were meant to be." My parents said nothing, smiling faintly as though they hadn't heard. Everyone knew once Cassidy had lost her ability to bear children, the Holloway's approval of her had curdled into contempt. But even their disapproval couldn't salvage a marriage that had already rotted to the core. Derek's mother grew impatient, pressing again. "Aurora, you're 30 now, still unmarried. You can't spend your life alone." My father's polite mask dropped. He looked her straight in the eye, his tone sharp with irony. "Perhaps you should worry about your own son, since he cannot keep a wife before you concern yourself with my daughter's choices." The room fell silent. And then, mercifully, my phone buzzed. Miles. He wanted to come by and wish my parents a happy new year. Heat crept into my cheeks, but after a pause I agreed. Since that night, this would be our first true meeting in private. I braced myself for awkwardness, but when he arrived, arms full of expensive gifts, voice warm and respectful, as he greeted my parents, it was Derek who looked awkward. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell," Miles said smoothly, bowing slightly. My father's eyes narrowed instantly, recognizing the intentions behind the gesture. His expression hardened into the stern disapproval of a protective father. But Miles didn't falter. He introduced each gift with calm eloquence, rare delicacies, treasures from his family's connections. Compared to Derek's brooding heaviness, Miles lit up the room like dawn breaking through storm clouds. The Holloways had meant to use this dinner to corner my parents, to pressure us back into an arrangement with Derek. But the moment Miles stepped into the light, every strategy they had crumbled. All they could do was watch Cassidy cling to Derek with white knuckles, while sighs of disappointment weighed down their throats. For all his youth, Miles carried himself with polish. With just a few sentences, I learned truths I hadn't known. His family had been in politics for 3 generations. His mother was a renowned businesswoman, and yet he alone had chosen medicine, all because of me. In his household, he was treasured, protected, and now they were waiting for him to bring me home. By the end of the evening, the air had shifted. My father, who had been skeptical, found himself speaking more easily with Miles. Their voices grew warmer, their conversation steady, as though some invisible bridge had been built. When we finally left the Holloway's home, Derek opened his mouth as though to apologize, but the words choked and died in his throat. His eyes met mine, drowning in regret. But it was far too late. The world had never spared space for if only. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.